About Julian and WikiLeaks is the author of The Most Dangerous Man in the World. That most dangerous man in the world is in an awful lot of danger himself. Andrew Fowler is one of the most acclaimed investigative journalists in the country.
Hello there, good afternoon. Now, I usually don't stand on this side of the microphone. I'm usually with you on the other side, reporting on people who are doing things that I report on. So it's quite unusual for me to be standing here, taking a position on something. But I've been following the WikiLeaks case for about as long as my colleague Mark, and that's since about 2010. I reported for Foreign Correspondent at Four Corners. I've interviewed Julian on 4 occasions, and I visited him in the Ecuadorian embassy. There we are, you can see how inexperienced I am at public speaking. So what happened is, after the filing of the 18 charges against Assange, I put a resolution to the ABC alumni, which are the ex-ABC staff, calling on the Prime Minister to actively seek repatriation to Australia of Assange, both for legal and humanitarian reasons. The resolution was passed overwhelmingly. Now, the letter we wrote pointed out that there are many mistruths about WikiLeaks and about the activities of Assange, and I think it's really important to get these points straight, because even among journalists that I meet and I discuss this matter with, far too long, too many days, too many weeks, too many months, too many years, they still don't understand the basic facts. The letter we wrote to Scott Morrison pointed out that the allegation that Assange indiscriminately published material which led to people being killed in Afghanistan is not true. Now, how do we know that? Well, you'd have to take the word of the US government that investigated it, particularly the Pentagon. They found that nobody had died. That Assange had conspired with Russian intelligence agencies to leak emails damaging to Hillary Clinton. The Mueller report, which carried out a detailed investigation of those events, makes no such claim. WikiLeaks is accused, and this is the big one, this is the one that they always throw it up every time. WikiLeaks is accused of dumping hundreds of thousands of unredacted documents on its website. Now, the truth of that is that the encryption key to that cache of files containing the documents was published by a Guardian journalist in a book he wrote. And that's how the documents got out. Because an internal person, his name is Dom Scheidberg, by the way, gave the key to the Freitag in Germany, a newspaper, and they published it, and then it was out. And only later, 3 days later in my recollection, other websites released the unredacted documents, and that WikiLeaks placed those documents on its website. So I think that's really important to remember. Now, the reply we got from Scott Morrison's office probably wouldn't surprise you, but I'll read you the crux of it. We are monitoring Mr. Assange's case closely, just as we would that of any other citizen who is in detention overseas, and we are affording him the attention we would afford any Australian in similar circumstances. Beyond consular assistance, Australia has no standing. Australia has no standing and is unable to intervene in Mr. Assange's legal proceedings. Which, of course, is simply not true. Now, how do we know that, right? Australia's response to Assange's situation has become inconsistent with the way it's responded to the plight of others. It appears that Assange is being dealt with differently because he exposed the truth about the killing of innocent civilians and the callous and criminal nature of the US-led war in Iraq. If he'd been a drug dealer, historical precedent indicates he would have received full diplomatic and even legal support of the Australian government. How do we know that? Well, in 2015, the Sydney Morning Herald's Mark Kenny reported that the then Prime Minister Tony Abbott had been criticised for perceived overreach when he evoked a $1 billion aid payment to Indonesia as he tried to save the lives of the convicted drug smugglers Andrew Chan and Muro Sukumaro. Okay? In 1986, Bob Hawke intervened in the case of 2 Australians, Kevin Barlow and Brian Chambers, who were facing the death penalty in Malaysia for smuggling drugs. His appeal went straight to the top of the Malaysian government. In 2005, Michelle Corby, an Australian citizen, was convicted of importing 4.5 kilos of cannabis through Bali's Denpasar airport. So for whom the bell tolls, really. She was found guilty and sentenced to 20 years in prison. After the sentence, Prime Minister John Howard immediately called a press conference to offer his sympathy to Corby. And he went further than that, not just to her, but to her family. And he announced that the government would provide 2 QCs to assist with that legal appeal. It's important for journalists and members of the public in particular. As my colleague said before, this is where it will be settled, in the public arena, not in the court. You make a difference in all this. Members of the general public need to support the campaign to stop Assange's extradition to the United States, not just for the good of Assange, but for the good of us all. Much is at stake. Now right now they've come for Julian Assange. Next, they might come for you. They are already coming for the ABC. Thank you.